So I saw The Little Things and it was okay, I guess. The Little Things takes place in the early 90s and is about an older cop named Deke working with a younger detective named Baxter to hunt a serial killer. So this movie isn't original by any means. How these movies go is that there's usually a young hotshot detective and an older, more experienced cop, and they have to work together. People have actually been comparing this rather unfavorably to Seven, but I haven't seen Seven, so I wouldn't know. It's an okay movie. It looks good at points. Denzel's fine. Rami's fine. Jared Leto plays the same character he played in Blade Runner 2049, but with less money. I feel like the only reason they set this in the 90s is so they could reference The Night Stalker, because you could make this movie today and nothing would be different. I thought I had predicted how this movie would go just by reading the description, but it turned out I was quite wrong. I'm getting spoilers now, so skip to this if you don't want to hear them. 3, 2, 1. So Deke and Baxter are trying to find this person who's been murdering women, and they think it's Jared Leto when he leads them on, and he makes Baxter drive him out to the middle of nowhere where he supposedly buried one of the bodies, and he makes Baxter dig for them, but it turns out Jared Leto was innocent and he likes the attention he gets from the cops, and that years ago he confessed to a murder that he didn't even commit. And then Baxter kills him with a shovel, and then they reveal that Deke accidentally shot a woman and they helped cover it up. And they show these boots on his bed which lead absolutely nowhere. And then Baxter receives a red Barrett that belonged to one of the victims, but it turns out that Denzel bought it to clear Baxter's conscience. Also, none of the other murders ever get solved, by the way, which is why this is kind of an unsatisfying ending. Overall, this movie's fine. One way I can sum it up is that I didn't dislike it, but I'm kind of glad I didn't pay for it. However, it's not one I'll really be thinking about or revisiting anytime soon, so I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. And then I saw Stardust, and it wasn't quite the worst thing ever. Stardust is about David Bowie on his first North American tour to promote The Man Who Sold the World in 1971. And that's about it. I was expecting this to be one of the worst things ever, but it just kind of isn't. I mean, it's not good, but I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would. I will say I don't know much about David Bowie's story, so I don't know how accurate it is. But judging by this movie's reception, and the fact that it opens by saying it's mostly fiction, I'm guessing not very close. However, I do really like his music, so I decided to watch it anyway. I will say that I don't support this movie, because David Bowie's family made it clear that they did not want this movie to be made, and they went ahead and did it anyway. Bowie's family didn't allow them to use any of his music, so instead they just used songs that David Bowie's covered. There's actually a movie called Velvet Goldmine that was inspired by David Bowie. However, Bowie disapproved of the movie, so they had to change the script, and they weren't allowed to use any of his songs. It's like Citizen Kane, but about glam rock and more fun. However, I remember Velvet Goldmine being decent, which is a bit more than I can say about this movie. Now, I won't say I hated everything about this movie. The pacing's pretty good. I can't say I was bored during it. Mark Maron as Ron Oberman is probably the best part of the movie. And there are some entertaining moments between him and David. However, that's kind of where my praise ends. Actually, no. At least they didn't mistake Aladdin Sane for Ziggy Stardust, so there's that. And the music is pretty good, even though it's not David's music. Johnny Flynn isn't a very good David Bowie, and the guy they got to play Mark Bolan isn't much better. And you know how in some movies the protagonist has this big moment at the end and his rival's just watching? Well, this movie literally does that with David Bowie and Mark Bolan, and it's actually kind of funny, but I don't think it's supposed to be funny. The movie shows that there is some tension between Mark and David, and from what I've heard, they did have a bit of a complicated history in real life, but I don't really know much about that, and the movie doesn't really do much with it either. This movie feels more like a road trip movie starring a David Bowie impersonator than a David Bowie biopic. I think one of the biggest things that hurt this movie is that it doesn't have any of David's songs, and instead they use songs he covered. And I don't really see the point in making a movie about David Bowie if you can't use his music. Most of the movie is about David and Ron's road trip as they get to know each other, but then they just kind of push that to the side when David goes back to England and he shows up for like a minute at the Spiders from Mars concert, and it just feels kind of tacked on. The movie also deals with David's relationship with his older brother Terry, who had schizophrenia, and apparently he was the inspiration behind Ziggy Stardust, which I don't know how accurate that is. One pretty big problem with the movie is that it's not that interesting, and I didn't think you could make David Bowie feel uninteresting. Another problem is that the movie looks kind of bad at points. Like sometimes you can see green screen, and some scenes have very little to no lighting. Overall, while not the worst movie ever made, Stardust is still not a very good movie. It just feels like an ordinary by-the-numbers biopic. I can see why his family was against this. I'm going to give Stardust a 4 out of 10. Watch Velvet Goldmine instead. Even though at some points it can feel like David Bowie Iggy Pop / fiction, it's still a better movie, and you won't be supporting this. Yeah, sorry I've done like nothing on here except for one video in all of January. I'm going to try to be more active this month and catch up on some movies from 2020, which I've admittedly not been doing. So yeah, see ya.
Colors and space, ballads and spice. What you doing out there, man?